Hi, Imani. This is Amos Elroy, and thanks for joining us today. How are you
Thanks for
doing?
having me. I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited about this race. We've had a great launch so far, so feeling good.
Great. Okay, so let me just introduce you. First of all, I'd like to run your little ad. I think it packs quite an impact, and I'd like to share it here.
Thank you.
Here we go.
We've been left out by the developers and big banks gentrifying our neighborhoods, left out by private insurance companies who place a dollar on our right to enjoy a healthy life, left out by a justice system that does not value our lives. I know what it's like to be left out. My family was left out when our house was nearly foreclosed on during the housing crisis. As a lifelong asthmatic, I've been left out when my insurance faltered and I wasn't able to afford life-saving medication. Like many of us, being left out by the people who are supposed to represent and protect us makes me mad. And when I get mad, I get moving. And that's why I've decided to take our fight to Washington by running for Congress in New Jersey's 10th congressional district. People run for office for two reasons: either to have power over everyday people or to stand up and fight for their community. And I've been fighting for mine my entire career. As a constituent advocate in the United States Senate, I fought for families just like mine who were at threat of losing their homes to greedy banks and corporations. And as a political organizer, I took on New Jersey's most powerful machine bosses to stop the corruption that infests our communities to the core. Because it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be left out, and we don't have to be left behind. We can choose to stand up, and we can choose to fight. Fight to take back our neighborhoods. Fight for the clean air and water that we deserve. And fight back against corrupt machine politics. We can choose to fight, and we can choose to win. Vote Imani Oakley for Congress, and together, let's take back our communities.
Nicely done. And let me just show this is the district we're talking about. I hope this is a updated outline.
Yeah, updated for now until they, some things may be shifted due to redistricting, but for right now, that's the updated version.
Great. And so mostly it covers parts of Essex and I believe some of Union. Uh,
hmm Yeah, so it's parts of Hudson County, parts of Union County, and parts of Essex County.
okay, and you're running against the Donald. No, not this
Yes,
one. This one. So
correct.
this guy was incumbent. He's been in Congress since 2012. He's inherited his father's position,
hmm
Representative Donald Payne. And so, tell me a little bit about what are the things that you don't quite like about his positions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, here in New Jersey, we have all been left out by political party bosses and, greedy politicians who literally have manufactured a democracy for themselves through our ballot design. We could talk more about that, but suffice it to say, for now, New Jersey has the most corrupt ballot design in the entire country, and it keeps people like Donald Payne in office. This district, as of 2019, was number one in the country for foreclosures. And we have a really big housing instability crisis due to rising rent in the area. And right now, Donald Payne has not introduced any bills to do anything about foreclosures, let alone any bills to hold banks accountable for any of the predatory lending or other games that they play with people's mortgage. And on top of that, we're a district that has one of the highest rates of childhood asthma in the nation as well, mostly affecting Black and Brown children. And I'm actually one of those Black and Brown children. I, had asthma all of my life, and I've lived in the district my entire life. And that's due to very high emissions and very high pollutants, in the area. But we also have an issue with lead, not only in the water, but also in the paint of old homes and apartment buildings, as well as the soil. And this contributes, of course, to childhood lead poisoning. And Donald Payne has been in office for 10 years and introduced zero bills with regards to the environment, and has also not signed on to a Green New Deal. And for me, for somebody to one, inherit their seat, sit in it for 10 years, be completely protected by the party in our corrupt ballot design, and still do so little for a district that has so much need, I really think that's a huge problem. And I think it's time for him to be replaced. And I think I'm the one to do it. I have actually lived in this district my entire life. I actually, my family nearly lost our home to foreclosure. I've grown with asthma, grown up with asthma, and also I've experienced actually living without health insurance and healthcare. So I really have the lived experience that reflects so many people who are in the district right now that Donald Payne simply is not doing a good job of representing. And so what I want to do is first, I want to replace Donald Payne. And then what I want to do is one, I want to make sure that when I get to Congress, I am supporting a Green New Deal and supporting various initiatives around that, such as the Federal Climate Corps, as well as GIAs, Green Implementation Agencies, that can help to facilitate our transition into green infrastructure. I also am a supporter of Medicare for all. Again, I need an asthma pump, and I also use an EpiPen. Combined, those two prescriptions are about $500 to $600. That's ridiculous. There is no reason why we should be paying that much money for prescriptions in this country. And so, I am an advocate of Medicare for all. I am also an advocate for abolishing ICE. A lot of people think that, ICE is an agency that's been there since the dawn of time. First of all, it's only been there since 2001, 2002, 2001. And it really does nothing to keep our communities safer. It simply rips families apart and punishes people for simply being born on different soil than US soil. And so it's time to get rid of it. And that's one of the things that I'm going to fight to do once I get into Congress. Additionally, one of the practices that I saw throughout my time working as a constituent advocate in the United States Senate was that there are banks who will take a mortgage and sell it to a private entity, a private lender. And when that private lender gets the mortgage, they slap on all of these new fees. So it's like some of them are really bad, like a transfer fee, which makes no sense because the people who hold the mortgage really don't know their stuff is being transferred. So transfer fee, there will be like other types of fees, administrative fees, et cetera, et cetera. And they slap on all these fees, and then it becomes part of the monthly mortgage payment. And when that happens, you have people who, could have been paying their mortgage on time for years, but now all of a sudden they have this increase, a significant increase typically in their mortgage payments that they have to do, and they can no longer pay their mortgage. So as Congresswoman, I want to outlaw that practice, because even saying it out loud, right, it sounds like it's something that should be completely illegal, but it's not. It's actually very legal. So I want to outlaw that practice and make it so that if a bank sells a mortgage to another entity, that new entity has to make sure that the mortgage that a holder is paying is no more than what they were paying under the previous mortgage owner. So that's number one. But I also, not everybody owns a house. Some people rent. And for people who are renting, I want to bring federal dollars to large municipalities and cities that, one, create 50% affordable housing in all units built after 2018. Right now, 30% is considered around like a good amount, but it's just not enough to keep up with the need of housing that we have right now. And so I want to bring federal dollars to large municipalities and cities that get to that point. I also want to bring federal dollars to large municipalities and cities that place a rent cap in their municipalities and cities. Rent is going up and up and up. And here's the thing, a lot of these units that have really high rent are empty. right? They're just waiting for somebody somewhere who can magically afford it to come live in it. And that makes no sense. Housing is a human right. So I want to bring federal dollars to large municipalities and cities that place rent caps in their municipalities and their cities. So those are just some of the things that I'm running on. If folks want to check out more about my platform, they can go to oakleyforcongress.com, click on issues, and everything I'm running on my entire platform can be found there as well.
That's fabulous. And so, if you could give me like the four or five or top priorities that you would be interested in addressing.
Yeah, so definitely housing. Housing affordability is a huge issue in the district and really all over the country. And of course, we just saw, with COVID, a bunch of people being at threat of being evicted. And, shout outs to Cori Bush. I actually attended her eviction moratorium protest to help push back that date for the moratorium. But, you know, uh, that they can't just keep being pushed back. We have to do something to make sure that we are securing housing for every single person. And so housing stability is going to be a huge one for me. The environment, again, this district really has very serious environmental concerns, and we need representatives in Congress who really will fight back against that and won't be bought out by folks who actually have donated to my opponent. My opponent has actually taken money from an oil pipeline pack as well as ExxonMobil. I'm not taking money from corporations or lobbyists or developers. And so you can rest assured that when I become Congresswoman, I will really be fighting for the environment and making sure that we can battle climate change in a timely fashion. And then three, of course, pro democracy. That is a big one, especially here in New Jersey, where we have the corrupt ballot design. And for those who are not familiar with New Jersey's corrupt ballot design, we have something called the ballot line, where machine Democrats place all the candidates that they support in one long column. And there's no demarcations. On a regular ballot, it'll be like president, Senate, House of Representatives, and then it'll be a box with all the people running for that position in it. In New Jersey, those boxes and demarcations are completely eliminated, and the machine puts establishment Dems in one long column with a little title under their name to describe what position they're under. And there was a Princeton professor who partnered with a think tank in New Jersey called New Jersey Policy Perspective that did a study on this ballot design. And it showed that it gives establishment backed candidates a double digit advantage when they go to run for office. And challengers, especially progressive challengers, are put in what we call ballot Siberia, which is a random place on the ballot, typically as far out to the side or as low down to the bottom as you can get, so that basically a voter's eyes won't naturally gravitate there. And this contributes to voter confusion. This contributes to people just like not even looking for other candidates. This contributes to people thinking that other candidates aren't serious when none of that is really the case. It's just the way our corrupt ballot design is being used here in New Jersey. And really, it's a form of voter suppression. And we need to be combating this not only in New Jersey, but all over the country. And as Congresswoman, I can't wait to get there and really fight to make sure that every vote is counted and that we have a true democracy here in New Jersey and the United States as a whole.
And if I may, this is actually how I noticed you when you were actively campaigning on changing the line. And
Yes.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I've been working on, changing the line for really abolishing the line for about 2 years now, maybe 2.5 at this point. I started the first leftist podcast in New Jersey focused on, exposing different aspects of New Jersey's machine. And one of them included their use of the corrupt ballot design. And so, I've been working on this issue for a minute. And I'm really, wanting to make sure they abolish it. But in the meantime, I have been talking to voters. I actually started an initiative called People's Ballot Initiative, where I go and talk to everyday voters about the ballot design in New Jersey and why it's a bad thing. Because here's the thing. Your average voter in New Jersey, the person who's like not steeped in politics, doesn't know that typically that we have a different ballot design than any other state in the nation. And they don't know that essentially their electeds are not being, they are not choosing their electeds. Their electeds are being chosen for them by party bosses who really just see their communities as financial and political playgrounds. And so I've been working on this for about 2 years. I don't think we'll be able to see the abolition of this thing by the time June 2022 comes around. So anybody out there who's looking to vote for me, if you're in the district, make sure you look for me. I will be in a random place on the ballot, so you have to look for my name. But yeah, I've been fighting this issue for a long time, for sure.
And finally, what are the rest of the priorities?
Yeah, so Medicare for all again is a huge one. We talked a little bit about that in the beginning. Also, I am also with regards to international policy, I am pro Palestine. One of the real transforming experiences of my life was when I actually worked for a nonprofit in South Africa called Funa Ukwazi. And one of the things we did was we helped South Africans, Black South Africans who were negatively impacted by apartheid. We helped them get their housing and sanitation rights. And apartheid is such a huge part of Black history, such a huge part of my personal experience, and what I'm seeing going on in Palestine completely parallels apartheid in South Africa. And so I think it's time that the United States stop giving so much money to Israel without the demand that they respect human rights and come up with some type of solution. Personally, I believe that the solution should be something around what they did in South Africa, which is to create an entirely new government that includes, all people. So in this Israel-Palestine situation, it would include both Israelis and Palestinians and coming together and making a new government and a new nation. But of course, I would love to bring in Palestinians to make sure that we're talking to stakeholders about what they would like to see in that region. And so, again, the rest of my platform can be found online, but those are really like the main sticking points that I'll be fighting for.
Great, and I'd like you to go a little bit back and talk about your background, your history, your story.
Yeah, for sure. So, I started out in Jersey politics. I actually worked for the machine at first. So I started out in the United States Senate. I worked for Senator Booker. I was a constituent advocate there. And my portfolio consisted of housing, consumer protection, taxes, and student loans. And actually, the majority of my portfolio, I dealt with probably about 80% of the cases of my portfolio were housing cases. So it was either people losing their house to foreclosure or people who were trying to find affordable housing that they could rent. That was about 80% of my portfolio. And so, I worked there at first. That was my first job in Jersey politics. But then I became a little disheartened because I felt that Senator Booker could have been more to the left than what he was doing. And so I decided to leave there. And then I worked for an assemblywoman in the New Jersey legislature. And at that point, that was when I really, really, truly got to see how New Jersey's Tammany Hall style of politics worked. There would be times where we would go and work on an issue, and it would be like this great bill, and some party leader or party boss would come look at it, strike right through it, and then say, "We're not doing any of that," and she would just fall in line. And I was like, this isn't what I'm looking for either. I'm looking to work in a solidly progressive place. And so that's when I left to go work for New Jersey Working Families. And during that time, we worked on a bunch of pro-democracy issues, from everything, including fighting the corrupt ballot design. We worked on fighting the issue of patronage and cronyism in the state. And so we did a bunch of pro-democracy issues there. And from there, I actually worked for Movement School, which is an organization that teaches folks from marginalized backgrounds to run political campaigns. It's a completely free program. You just go online, sign up and register when openings happen, and they teach you how to run campaigns. And then from there, that's when I decided to make the leap into running. And somewhere in there, I started my podcast. It was called Upfront Now. where I exposed various things about the machine, everything from the ballot design to how previous women and people of color were treated while working there. And it's a bunch of different issues that we covered, as well as covering candidates who were running against the line, progressives in New Jersey. So that's a bit about my background in Jersey politics.
But aside from that, where did you grow up? What did you study?
Yeah, so I grew up in Montclair, and so I went to Montclair High, graduated from there. I then went on to attend Howard University. I attended Howard University both undergrad and law school, and sometime in the middle there, I went to New York University. And those were really, really transformative experiences, especially in undergrad. At first, I came in wanting to go into a career in oral surgery, and and but around that time, Trayvon Martin was murdered, as well as Occupy Wall Street was happening, and that started to push me more and more into the political realm because it became more apparent to me that if we are going to solve problems, we are really going to have to make sure that we get the policy right on the front end. We have to make sure that policy is basically preventative medicine for government, and for people and for everyday people. So that's when I first started getting into policy work and all of that. And then in law school, I actually served as a legal observer during the Baltimore uprisings, and that was also a transformative experience because at that time there were literal tanks driving down the street in Baltimore because people were protesting against police violence and police murders and police brutality. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, there were literal military tanks, and it's when I say it out loud and I explain to people what I saw there, it almost sounds like an exaggeration, but this actually happened here simply because people were demanding their rights. And so that's a little bit of background about my schooling and where I grew up at.
Okay. As you probably know, there's a segment of the progressive voters that has expressed recently discomfort or disappointment with elected officials, and there's been a little bit of a backlash against the squad. What do you think is going on, and how do you see it?
Well, I mean, I think probably the best way to answer that question would be to have those folks on the show. For me personally, I'm really focused on, really making sure that we get a win for New Jersey. Right now, New Jersey has zero squad members, and the elected officials that you can truly consider progressive, you can count on one hand. So, I mean, almost when I hear that type of stuff, it almost sounds like, first world problems to me because right now I'm really fighting for my district. I'm really fighting to make sure that we get a progressive in who will make sure that we have progressive policy that benefits New Jerseyans. And that's my big focus. And what I've been receiving so far from the left in New Jersey has been very, very positive. Folks are ready to get rid of the machine here. I mean, because it's just overbearing and they do not help people. And on top of that, the party boss system is wildly exploitative. So, the response that I've been getting from folks on the left, both, in district as well as all across New Jersey, has been extremely, extremely positive. And I'm so thankful for that because I really think it shows that we can build this support and really get our win come June.
Finally, let me ask you. It's hard to ignore the recent world affairs of what's going on with particularly I'm referring to Afghanistan, and I'm curious what your how you view it, and what is your position on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that over the years, over 20 years, spending $1 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, in
It's far
Afghanistan
more, far more.
really is just, I'm sorry?
It's far more than a trillion.
Yeah,
That probably is more like 2 trillion, and maybe even much more.
right. And so spending that much money and having completely failed really demonstrates how the United States needs to move away from fighting these forever wars and getting into these conflicts and really move to a place of diplomacy. I mean, this, if anything shows that, it's that. But, we can review that at a later time. I think in the more immediate future, what we need to be focusing on is making sure that we are saving Afghan lives and using the gross amount of resources we have with our military to help get refugees out of Afghanistan and save their lives right now. That to me is the immediate need that we need to do right now. We need to make sure we are not, complicating it with bureaucracy and paperwork. We do not have the time. We have to move quickly and making sure that we're saving lives.
And I mean, is there ever a justification on humanitarian grounds to intervene anywhere for the U.S.?
So I think we haven't seen that for a very long time. I think probably World War II would be the last example that would make sense in my mind of the time where, like, yeah, we probably had to go, to war at that point. But I can't think of any recent example where that makes sense.
Okay, and human right and solidarity, you're absolutely correct about all of these items. Imani supports them, and we're looking forward to your run.
Thank you so much. And again, if anybody wants to check out more about me and my background and my platform, you can go to Oakley 4, that's FOR, Congress.com. You can check out all my issues, you can sign up to volunteer, and you can make a donation, which is going to be very, very critical because I am running a grassroots campaign, taking no money from corporate PACs or lobbyists or developers. So please, if you can, drop a donation on our website. It would be very, very, very appreciated.
And we'll post the link down in the comments. And hope we can cover more of your run down the line, maybe some events and so. Thank you very much for joining me on the show, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Bye bye. Bye everybody.